Let's talk about a place you've probably never seen. A place so small, so narrow, it could fit perhaps 10 football fields across, barely, and yet what happens there can ripple across the entire world and is very much doing so today. Because this tiny strip of water carries nearly 1/5 of the oil the planet relies on. And right now, it's at the center of a war. What happens next not only will reach your gas pump before breakfast. This most important place on earth is not Washington, not Moscow, and not Beijing. It's a narrow strip of water between Iran and Oman, a place called the Strait of Hormuz. You've heard the name before, usually when the world is nervous, usually when oil prices are climbing, like now, usually when war is in the air, as it is now, because this narrow passage, only about 21 miles wide at its tightest point, carries something extraordinary. Nearly 1 out of every 5 barrels of oil used on planet Earth passes through it every day. Tankers from Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Kuwait, and the UAE line up like trucks at a toll booth, waiting to pass through the gate. Because once they leave the Persian Gulf, they must pass through one single exit, the Strait. And tonight, that gate is surrounded by war. The latest chapter began when the United States and Israel launched a massive strike campaign against Iran. Thousands of sorties, cruise missiles, precision strikes. Targets included missile bases, drone facilities, and naval installations across Iran's southern coast. But Iran has never planned to fight the United States ship for ship. It never intended to build 10 aircraft carriers. It never intended to challenge the United States Navy head-to-head. Instead, Iran built something else, a strategy. Because if you cannot defeat the largest navy on earth, you attack the doorway it must defend. And Iran controls the northern side of that doorway, the Strait of Hormuz. For decades, the Iranian military quietly built a playbook. Small attack boats, anti-ship missiles, sea mines, drones, submarines designed to hide in shallow water, not weapons designed to win a global war, but weapons perfectly designed to close a narrow gate. Imagine, just for a moment, a $1 billion oil tanker, 4 football fields long, carrying 2 million barrels of crude, moving slowly through a tight shipping lane. And now imagine a single naval mine, one explosion beneath the hull, and the tanker burns. The shipping lane closes, insurance companies panic, ships turn around, and suddenly 20% of the world's oil supply stops moving. That is why the Strait matters, and that is why wars in the region always seem to revolve around it. During the early hours of the campaign, American forces moved quickly to neutralize Iran's naval power. Airstrike targeted ports, shipyards, and missile batteries. Satellite images later showed burning vessels in the harbor of Bandar Abbas. Warships destroyed, missiles launchers gone, command centers flattened. But the strategy from Tehran was never about naval superiority. It was about disruption. Missiles were launched across the region. Drones struck military bases. Commercial ships reported harassment. And shipping traffic through the strait slowed dramatically. Because even the rumor of danger can stop global trade, insurance companies raised risk premiums. Tanker operators paused voyages. Dozens of vessels simply waited outside of the Persian Gulf. And when oil stops moving, markets react instantly. Within days, global crude prices surged. Traders who had ignored the region for years suddenly rediscovered the Strait of Hormuz, because a disruption there does not stay there. It shows up in Tokyo, in Berlin, in Los Angeles, and eventually at your local gas station. Every war in the Middle East carries 2 battlefields. The first battlefield is military, missiles, ships, aircraft, And the second battlefield is economic, oil markets, energy supplies, inflation. And in this war, both battlefields opened at the same time. Military planners worked to secure shipping lanes, naval patrols expanded, mine-sweeping vessels prepared for the worst. Because even today, despite satellites, drones, and advanced surveillance, a single mine placed in the right location could temporarily close the most important oil route on Earth. Which brings us back to that narrow gate, the Strait of Hormuz, a passage so small on the map, yet so powerful in the real world that global economies depend on it for stability. Tonight, aircraft still patrol overhead, warships still guard the shipping lanes, missile defenses remain active across the region, and somewhere beneath the dark waters of the Gulf, the world's energy supply continues its quiet journey through the narrowest choke point in global trade. A place where geography becomes strategy and strategy becomes power. Because wars are rarely about what they appear to be about. They're not always about ideology or speeches or politics. Sometimes they're simply about a narrow gate in the sea. And tonight, the world is watching that gate very carefully, because if it closes, even for a few days, the effects will ripple through the entire planet. And that, Americans, is the story of the narrow waterway through which the modern world flows. And now here's the part of the story you may not have heard. The Strait of Hormuz may carry 20% of the world's oil, but for the United States today, imports far less oil from that region than it once did, thanks largely to domestic shale production, which means the country most threatened by the closure of the strait is not necessarily America, it's Asia, China, Japan, South Korea, nations whose economies depend heavily on Gulf oil. In other words, the narrow gate Iran threatens to close may end up putting pressure not just on Washington, but on Beijing, and that may explain why the entire world is suddenly paying attention to a place most people could not find on a map yesterday. And now you know the rest of the financial story. I banker you. Good day. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. As always, take care of yourselves and each other. And now more than ever, build that stack.